And good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Well, pardon me. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I really appreciate you being with me. By the way, let me say this again. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. We're up at around 86, almost 8,700 subscribers. Like I've told you, my goal is about 10,000. And we're approaching that, but it's up to you to get out there and to share. So subscribe and like and share. Do me a favor. I really appreciate that. Okay, I promised you yesterday that we're going to examine the linguistics of the end of the age harvest. In Matthew 13, 39, pardon me, 39 and 40, Jesus, and I'll just read from the New American Standard here. I'll start with verse 39. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age. End of the age. And the reapers are the angels. Therefore, just as the tares are gathered into the fire and burned with fire, gathered up and burned with fire, so shall it be at the end of the age. Yeah, end of the age. The Son of Man will send forth his angels, and they will gather out of the kingdom all things, all stumbling blocks, and those who commit lawlessness, and it will cast them into the furnace of fire. In that place there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And in a critical verse, then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let the one who has ears, let him hear. We'll get to that verse a little bit later, okay? Twice here, Jesus speaks of the end of the age. As I pointed out to you yesterday, in the amillennial world in which I was raised, it was taken for granted, and by the way, in amillennial circles, that is the dominant view. I mean, there are a few exceptions here and there scattered around, but the same is true of the postmillennial world. In the dispensational world, you have all these different ages. I mean, you have age here, age there, blah, blah, blah. But it is nonetheless widely held that the end of the age that Jesus was referring to is the end of the current age in which you and I are living, i.e., the Christian age. Okay. So that, broadly speaking, generically speaking, is the consensus view of commentators today. When Jesus said harvest is at the end of the age, that's the end of time, that's the end of the Christian age. Let me say this again. I'm sorry if this sounds redundant, but folks, once you understand the Christian age has no end, all futurist eschatology is over. It's done. It's finished. It's false. That's simple, but it's profound. You have to catch the power of that simple statement. Okay, so Jesus said, harvest is at the end of the age. Many translations render this consummation of the age, meaning that an age is brought to its climax. It has accomplished its purpose, we might say. Okay, will the Christian age ever finish its purpose? I mean, after all, according to Isaiah 66, Ephesians chapter 3, verse 7, and a host of other passages, we are taught that after the day of the Lord, his coming in flaming fire for the judgment of all flesh, survivors of that day would go into all of the nations which had never heard the name of the Lord, the nations which had never called on the name of the Lord. In other words, they're not followers of Yahweh. Survivors of the day would go into the nations, those nations, and proclaim the name of the Lord and bring them to, quote, Zion, unquote. Well, Zion is the church of the living God after the day of the Lord. Hebrews chapter 12, 21 and following. Do you see the point here? This is incredible. How can the church finish its task, fulfill its task, if at the day of the Lord or after the day of the Lord, the church continues to preach the gospel? There is no consummation, finishing its task, of the Christian age. However, when we consider that the Old Covenant age, the age of Moses and the law, had a very distinct purpose. Romans chapter 5, verse 21, the law was added that sin might abound. Are you telling us, Preston, I'm not the one that wrote this, by the way, obviously. Are you telling us God gave the law, the Old Covenant law, to make men sin? No, 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 no. God gave the law to Israel to show all men that you can't be justified by law keeping. You can't be good enough to be perfect, to demand of God that you be saved. So if that's true for Israel under law, his divine, holy, good law, then how much more is it true of those outside of that covenant who did not have the law, did not have a covenant relationship? So not only did the law, and thus violation of the law, magnify the horrific nature of sin for those under the law, it likewise exacerbated the sinfulness of those who were not under the law. That's point number one. Point number two, the purpose of the Old Covenant system was, according to Paul in Galatians chapter 3, the law was given to bring us to Christ. Speaking, obviously, to bring Israel to Messiah. Messiah would give the new covenant to them, and they would spread it to the nations and be the light to the nations. Salvation is to the Jew first, then to the Greek, to the non-Israelite, to the non-Jew. So the purpose of the law, the purpose of the Old Covenant, was to make sin abound and to bring Messiah. But after the faith, when translations render Galatians 3:24 and following, after that faith has come, we're no longer under a schoolmaster. That's very, very bad. The Greek is literally after the faith has come. Abraham was the very epitome of faith. Noah was epitome of faith. Isaac, Jacob, all of the Old Testament worthies of Hebrews chapter 11 were men and women of faith. So Galatians chapter 3 is not saying, well, after faith came, we're no longer under the law, no longer under the schoolmaster. No, that's not what it's saying. The law was given as a schoolmaster to bring us to Christ. After that, the faith, that's the new covenant. After that, the faith has come, we're no longer under a schoolmaster, no longer under Torah, no longer under the Old Covenant. Why? Well, because the law brought condemnation. The law, Torah, could never deliver from the law of sin and death. But there is now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, who do not walk after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Romans 8, 1-3. The law fulfilled its purpose, ladies and gentlemen, meaning that the Old Covenant age, the age of Moses and the law, was supposed to end. As I'm sitting here trying to remember precisely which commentator it was. I believe it was N.T. Wright who said, the law, the old law, contained within itself the seeds of its own demise. How so? Because it predicted the coming of a new covenant. It predicted the coming of a new covenant age. And so Paul could say in Romans 3:20 and following, so then righteousness apart from the law was attested in the law. Now, I hope you see the purpose and the point of all of this, ladies and gentlemen. Matthew 13 is about the consummation of the age. What age? The age that had served its purpose and would give way to the unending, everlasting, never passing away age. Now then, let's look at the linguistics very quickly, and I'll have to pick this up tomorrow, I'm real sure. Jesus said harvest is at the end of the age. By the way, there are a few translations. There's not really good manuscript documentation for this, but the translators believed that because of the context that Jesus really was talking about the age in which he was living. You know, the Old Covenant age. And thus they render it, verse 39, harvest is at the end of this age, the age in which he was living. And again, there's not just tons and tons of Greek manuscript documentation for that, so I'm not hanging my hat on that. I'm not hanging my hat on, quote, this, unquote. I'm simply pointing it out that there are some translations that render it that way because the translators believe the context demanded that. Okay, take it for what it's worth. Here's the point. Jesus was speaking of the consummation of an age that would reach its climax having served its purpose. So I hope that you will take everything that I've said this morning into consideration. What is the term that he used? It is suntelia to aioniou. Now, there are different suffixes of that, doesn't change the meaning. So he uses that twice to speak of the coming end of the age, consummation of the age. Then in verse 49, he tells another parable about the fishermen who cast out their nets, and they brought them in, and they began to throw away the bad, that which was not good, and then to gather in the good. And he said, so shall it be at the consummation of the age. So three times in this passage, we have the use of the term consummation, end of the age. Now, we have definitive proof. Honestly, we do. And I'm going to talk about this tomorrow. But we have definitive proof that the age that Jesus was referring to was the end of the Old Covenant age. Notice this, and this will be very quick. I'll pick up it again tomorrow in more detail. In Matthew chapter 24, Jesus in Matthew chapter 23, 36 and following, had predicted the destruction of Jerusalem that was coming and that came in AD 70. He said, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent unto thee, how often I would have gathered you together as a mother hen gathers up her chicks, but you would not. Behold, your house is left to you desolate." He's predicting the fall of Jerusalem and the temple. As they begin to leave that temple and to go out toward the Mount of Olives, directly east of the temple, the apostles begin to show Jesus the beauty, the size, the majesty of that temple. And they ask him, tell us, when shall these things be? What things? The things he's just been saying. Destruction of the temple. Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your parousia and the end of the age? Suntelia to aioniou. You know, it's remarkable. And look, I took this position for years. I really did. I'm not trying to be overly disparaging. But from where I'm at right now, I find it difficult to believe how anyone could read the text and believe the apostles were asking about the end of the Christian age. Very simply, closing point, they were asking about the end of the age that temple represented. Now look, folks, please don't click off. You need to take advantage of this wonderful, wonderful 2-book special for December 2024, Temple to Telos. Temple to Telos. This book is basically an atomic bomb for futurist eschatologies. Because in this book, I prove that it was the very first century temple that was the focus of eschatological consummation. This book, these are the days in which all things must be fulfilled, based on Luke 21 and verse 22. These 2 books prove definitively, in my estimation, that the end of the age truly was in all the time of AD 70. The end of the age truly was the end of the Old Covenant age. That is the end of the age that was supposed to end, not the end of the endless age. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. Click on the banner up at the top, order the books. If you bought these 2 books separately, that costs you something almost $48. This month, U.S. orders only, December 2024, total delivered price, $30. Take advantage of the book offer. You'll be glad you did. You're going to get a wealth of information in these 2 books. Okay, I'm out of time. I'll see you on the flip side as we look closer at the linguistics of Matthew 13. See you on the flip side.